Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I already made part of this video, but then this came in before I, put it all together. So I'm going to start here. Ellen 10 talk show. I need something new to challenge me, and that's this is fundamentally dishonest, right? The real reason she's leaving is that she had the brand of the be kind lady. Everyone said about how nice Ellen was and what a nice person, and she wasn't. And I was pointing this out for years. And I'm not a cancel culture person. I don't care if people get canceled or not. It's not really any of my concern. But if they do get canceled, it should be because they suck in some way at doing their job. Like they're not good at doing their job. And Ellen wasn't because she was a lie. Like she was always mean, and I pointed this out over and over again, that she liked to humiliate people. She liked to humiliate celebrities. She liked to practical joke people. She was mean to her audience in various ways, mean to her staff. But everyone said that she was one of these nice guys, right? Like Tom Hanks and Will Smith. People who have the nice guy brand or moniker, and it's just all fake, right? It's all a brand, and it's staging. And then eventually this, everybody caught up to what I was saying. I'd been saying this for years, even in terms of she had a girlfriend who died, and the story that she told and everything about it was weird. They had broken up, and the girl died in a car accident. She drove home and saw the car, and it was, her telling of the story and how she came up with a comedy routine that she did on the Johnny Carson show based in her girlfriend dying, and that catapulted her career, and the whole thing was weird. And, she seemed very heartless, not the nice person that everyone said that she was. So eventually, people realized that she wasn't a nice person, and after that, her days were numbered. But the other interesting part about this is someone who's very similar is Jimmy Kimmel, and they're good friends. They're both what I consider gatekeepers. People are higher up in the, Hollywood establishment, the cult of Hollywood, and they're people that both humiliate other celebrities, and, they're not nice people. And during this summer, Jimmy Kimmel started to get, Me Too'd and some of these things. He started to get canceled. He wore blackface twice, once with Oprah Winfrey and once with Karl Malone, and then all the misogynistic stuff he did on The Man Show. And that stuff started to reemerge, and he just took off for 3 months. He never addressed it, and he came back. Of course, election was going on, all these things, and everyone forgot about him. Where Ellen, on the other hand, addressed all these allegations, and it just stretched out, and now she's gone. So it shows you, if you just ignore, this is, we learned this from Bill Clinton, who should have, resigned for all the things he did around, his impeachment with Monica Lewinsky, but he just refused to do it. Trump did the same thing, right? Trump, whatever he was accused of, he just turned it around and never took responsibility for it. And so that's the way to handle things. We now have learned, it's certainly not the way to handle things spiritually, but you can prolong your career and miss out on the cancel culture if you just, don't talk about it and just disappear for a little bit and let it blow over, which of course is a weaselly thing to do, but, it shows you how fake the cancel culture is. It just, based in emotion and based in the person that's getting targeted that day, the cancelee du jour, right? And so Ellen, right, she just wasn't going to survive this thing once she addressed it. And, the truth is going to be there. Like, you can't escape the truth and the consequences for it. Greetings, brothers and sisters. Grimes hospitalized for panic attack after Elon Musk's Saturday Night Live SNL debut. And apparently, she wrote this Instagram post. Here's her and Miley Cyrus, both wearing, she's wearing a crown. Grimes, I forgot to post these because I somehow caused myself to have a panic attack and went to the hospital yesterday from the studio of SNL, which TBH was quite crazy, and I suppose it's a good time to start therapy. That was a good time, I don't know, years ago. Before you named your kid a series of numbers and letters. But nonetheless, wow, Miley Cyrus is good live and so chill. So grateful to the SNL team for being so kind and letting me sneak in as Princess Peach. And so proud of my beautiful E, which I know will upset the Grimes fans, so I apologize in advance. But he killed it. You mean Saturday Night Live? Like, or Dogecoin? What exactly did he kill? And so there was this, there was that, a couple of photos. This is Grimes's her Instagoal. Well, that's just weird. See, just it's always weird stuff with Grimes and just, But having a panic attack because of being on the set of SNL. This is X, the little boy that they now just call X. That kid's going to need therapy. But anyways, Grimes had a panic attack and had to be hospitalized for her husband being on Saturday Night Live. Chris Cuomo goes to town on Ted Cruz. Proof that politics make you stupid. Exactly. Chris Cuomo is an expert on stupid. Let's see what he has to say here.
But you're going to have to remember tonight. Tonight, you witnessed the moment that the GOP decided to turn its back on self-government and to become something less than that.
What is that less than that thing? Chris Cuomo. He just has these crazy eyes. Like if he was going to be cast in a movie, it would be some unhinged, emotionally unstable dude that gets arrested at a frozen yogurt shop.
We don't know what yet.
We don't know what yet? We don't know what yet.
To turn its back on self-government and to become something less than that. We don't know what yet. Liz Cheney gave a speech tonight in defense not simply of her own fate as number 3 in the leadership, but the fate of her party and, in a larger sense, our way of life. Now, be clear. I'm sure the media will hype what she said. It was not revelatory. That's why it's so important.
In my estimation, there's nothing worse than a concern troll. A concern troll is somebody, especially in this case, who's your enemy, right? That comes in and tries to give you advice and tell you how to run your thing because they're so concerned for you. Right? Like he's so concerned for the Republican Party. Like he's so concerned that they're going into a direction where they're becoming the party of Trump. He's concerned for them. That they didn't listen to Liz Cheney, the great, wise Liz Cheney and the Cheney family that was the epitome of morality, that her father worked for. I mean, he was Secretary of Defense and then Vice President. And as Secretary of Defense, he worked for Halliburton, and he made between $20 and $80 million from the Iraq War and the wars that were illegal wars. I mean, people, a million people were killed in Iraq. And so Dick Cheney is, like, if you're going to think about someone who's evil, somebody who's like the epitome of evil, a paranoid, heartless, just a bad person, just a, horrible human being in Dick Cheney, a warmonger. And that's how he led this country into a bunch of illegal wars that had, no basis in national defense or anything. And he profited from them. He had stock options on Halliburton, which made a fortune because of those wars, rebuilding Iraq and all the things that they do. And the left-leaning media didn't like Dick Cheney at all, right? He was the pariah. He was the Donald Trump of his age. They talked about Dick Cheney all the time as an evil person. But now all of a sudden, they're the paragon, the Cheney family, of keeping the Republican Party balanced. And this concern troll said, you got to listen to Liz Cheney, right? I'm just saying this for you guys. Like, you're a one-sided, one-note, one-trick pony, and your network has really almost nothing without Trump. They're still obsessed with him. Like, they talk about Trump all the time. This is a way they're talking about Trump. Like, they're never going to let go of Trump until he, like, dies. If there's any way that they can talk about Trump, they will, because they have, like, nothing else, right? Biden's running the country into the ground, and it was already, there was no real hope of turning this country around, right? There was, that ship has sailed. But Biden is definitely making it as bad as possible, as quickly as possible.
This wasn't about Liz Cheney identifying ideas that we had never imagined, rhetoric that took us to a different place.
Did you just say rhetoric? I think you just said rhetoric. So I've addressed the gas crisis and stuff to do with them saying that cows, the farming of cows and beef products and things like this, meat products, are killing 12,000 people a year from pollution, things like this. I talked about that on my Apocalaughsnow channel. There's a video up there, the gas crisis and all these things that seem completely staged. But he just said rhetoric, right?
Identifying ideas that we had never imagined, rhetoric that took us to a different place. It was simple. She gave a simple statement of reality.
And why is he so emotional about this? Like, he cares about the governance of the Republican Party and their, what they're trying to do is disenfranchise Trump supporters and democracy in itself. And we'll see how this thing plays out in 2 years and 4 years if Trump runs again. But people on the right are completely triggered by the direction of this country. And there's a lot of messed up things like, the left is doing. And so they are, probably growing in number of people who are concerned by the direction of this country. And it's going to be bad in 4 years because of JoJo's policies. JoJo's policies are against economic development. That's what's happening. They are, trying to move this into, where America is taken down economically and lifestyle-wise to what it is in the rest of the world, right? And so nobody's going to like that, and they're going to blame JoJo in 4 years from now when they start realizing, when they get the bill for his policies and, the way that COVID played out. And so the devaluation of the dollar, when you start spending $10 for a loaf of bread and things like this, that's when people are going to realize, they're going to blame somebody, because they're asleep, right? I've noticed that there's lots of people who no longer have to wear masks that are wearing masks. The mandates have come down. Fauci is even, saying that people don't have to wear masks as much and, all these things. And they're still wearing them because it's like a safety blanket psychologically. There's just a level of sleepwalking that's happening across the country. And so what would wake people up? Well, like spending $10 on a loaf of bread, spending $5 a gallon for gas, all these things, $10 a gallon for gas. Those are the kind of things when people realize, oh, wow, things have got really bad really quickly. And then when it hits that point, they're just going to blame whoever's in charge. They're not going to listen to this thing. It's all Trump's fault, and we're trying to fix it. Whatever the consequences. And people are all going to suffer. Like, in some way, your lifestyle isn't going to be as good, and people are going to freak out. And when they do, right, there's one alternative, and that's Trump. Like, they're going to turn to Trump or the people, the Trump wannabes, or whoever it is, and they're going to go with that. And there's going to be a lot of anger and outrage and things. And things could swing back in the other direction. And no suppression on social media or any of these things is going to make a difference.
Trump lost. And the big lie is just that, a lie. And when leaders refuse to stand for anything, all those whom they lead will fall for anything. I want you to hear her main argument. No one who wants her out, remember this, has even tried to counter what you are about to hear. In fact, the entire conference, reportedly, the entire right side of the aisle walked out during her words.
Today, we face a threat America has never seen before.
It's a threat. What is this threat, Liz Cheney? Them and their threats, right? You know, coming in with some fear-based... It's a threat. Tell us the threat, Liz Cheney.
A former president who provoked a violent attack on this Capitol in an effort to steal the election has resumed his aggressive effort to convince Americans that the election was stolen from him. He risks inciting further violence.
Liz Cheney.
Millions of Americans have been misled by the former president. They have heard only his words, but not the truth, as he continues to undermine our democratic process, sowing seeds of doubt about whether democracy really works at all.
You know, I covered this, I don't know, yesterday, 2 days ago. And if you look at what happened with the election, and all elections in general, because, again, only a bunch of hand-picked people can be, you know, president, can be a senator or something like that. If you don't make it into the club, if you're not endorsed by the club, you know, there was this Facebook guy who said, a former Facebook guy, a billionaire, investment capital guy, and he said there's 150 people that really run the world, right? There's money people, people behind the money. And if you don't get their approval, you're never going to be president. And so the leading up to the election, the way the media covered Trump, the way the media didn't cover Biden, the way they let him hide away, the Democratic primary, the way it was rigged for Biden, you know, he was given favorable treatment. Anybody can see it, right? If you just watch a little bit of the news and just do a little bit of alternative research, and you just look at Biden like he's just not a good guy and he's not a functioning person, right? I mean, he's barely functioning. He's always been a screw up, and he's not a good candidate. He had a lot of negatives, and they just lied about those things leading up to the election, hammering Trump for years, and then all the ways that Trump was treated differently. And they hated Trump. I mean, people like Chris Cuomo and all these people. And Liz Cheney's a Republican, and she saw that going on, and she could have said, look, this isn't fair. The way that the election went isn't fair. But she's an establishment Republican, and they hate Trump more than anybody else because he took their party away from them. And so she is, the old guard, and she's verbalizing what they want, which is to get rid of Trump, the Trump and the Trumpers. But that makes up basically 80% of their enthusiastic base, right? And so, what she's saying here is not factually accurate. And Chris Cuomo's talking like she's dropping some kind of truth bomb.
Those who refuse to accept the rulings of our courts are at war with the Constitution. Remaining silent and ignoring the lie.
What she just said there, those who are not willing to accept the rulings of our courts. If our courts rule in a certain way and you don't accept those rulings, you're at war with the Constitution. Think about what she just said there. If there's corrupt judges, and there are, right, and you have a corrupt court, which there is, and they rule against what is right for the country or what's right for you, you are now at war with the Constitution. And so that's the mainstream attitude right now, that all you people who aren't accepting of this bad deal that you're about to get, that we're going to give you, the establishment, the old school politicians, because she's, like a Republican JoJo.
Emboldens the liar. I will not participate in that.
Remaining silent and ignoring the lie emboldens the liar. We have all lived this truth.
See, that in itself is a lie, because they're keeping Trump alive, right? They're keeping Trump relevant. Liz Cheney and Chris Cuomo. Trump doesn't have any power other than his base, other than his supporters that make up a good portion of the Republican Party. He has no platform on social media in which to express himself. And so the only coverage he gets is when the mainstream media chooses to cover him, when the mainstream media puts out information about Trump. And it's the left media that does this more than certainly Fox News. And so Trump is, been diminished in so many ways. And he would literally disappear from the majority of people. Like, you have to go out and seek him, and people would forget about him if they just would shut up about him. If Liz Cheney hadn't, gone out and talked smack about him, and that was not what was best for her, at least in terms of, her establishment in the Republican Party, because they were going to have to react. She provoked them by engaging with Trump. The election's over. A lot of Trumpers and QBs realize they got played. They're disappointed, and they're kind of lost, right? They still, some of them still like Trump, or, they might even still worship him, but not so many. It's less. And he has no place to express himself. And yet they keep on bringing him back. And I watched, every time I turned on MSNBC or CNN, or I looked at some mainstream media website, they had an article or they had a story about this Liz Cheney Trump thing, which is a real nothing burger. Because until Trump runs again in 4 years, he has no power and influence over politics. But all of a sudden, the left media is obsessed with the inner workings of the Republican Party and Trump's influence over it. And they're still talking about Trump. We're 4 months after JoJo's been sworn in, right? And so it's been a long period of time, and they're still talking about Trump more than JoJo, and they're still obsessed with him because they need him. I'll get into this more in a moment, but they need him. And Liz Cheney is, doing this work for them, keeping Trump relevant so they can flip out and, say this is the end of the world as we now know it, that a former president, that the election was rigged, but Hillary Clinton, said it for 4 years and no one said anything. It's not, it's a double standard, right? And the whole thing is, just a way to keep Trump alive because they need him.
What they have ignored on the right about Trump, they have now empowered, and they are owned by it, okay? None of them stayed to listen to her speech. None of them are open to any idea other than what they are told to believe, and we'll discuss why. One member, Representative Buck, was there. One member has come forward and said, since Buck, I don't even know what he thought of it, hey, I support what she said. One. And
see, what this is all about is all the people who are Trump supporters. And again, Trump isn't what they think he is. Like, it's the cult of Trump. I'm not a Republican, and I didn't vote for Trump, and I'm not going to vote for Trump. But what Trump represents to so many people is some sort of resistance to what we see going on as a cultural hijacking. And Trump didn't do anything as president. It got worse. This left movement, this bizarre left movement, and I don't want to call it liberal because it's not liberal. Liberal people are caught up in it. And you have, Democrats are caught up in it. But it's part of an agenda we've known about forever. And it's a solution of a problem that nobody's willing to talk about. Like, you don't hear any politician talking about the national debt and the collective debt and the value of the dollar, the inflation, not in a real way, because they're going to talk about it when it becomes public. But this was the time to talk about it. And Trump didn't during the election. Trump didn't talk about any of these social issues in a real way. This leftist social agenda and the things that are going on, in terms of cultural things, in terms of the way that we view human beings and the way that they're pushing all this narratives and rhetoric that many people don't agree with. Many people realize that it is taking America in the wrong direction. And the left is trying to say that those people are out of time and out of date. I mean, not the left, people like Chris Cuomo, people pushing this agenda, that those people are clueless and shouldn't have the right to vote. And the way that those people, and then people like me and you, or people who are, have a alternative narrative to what's going on, are treated on social media like we're being hunted on social media. They are suppressing us. There's things that we can't talk about. I mean, there's things that are automatic bans and deplatforming now, and just to deal with, like, say, medicines, right? Like, you can't talk about, certain things. I mean, people wanted me to cover that concert, and I'm like, what movie are you watching, right? Like, you don't understand by now that you can't say anything about that, right? Like, that just came out of nowhere where you just talk about something. It's automatically a strike. It's automatically something where they, work to deplatform you. So we are being censored on major things that are going on right now where you can't talk about it at all. And so all the people who are under that category that hear all this crazy stuff that's being talked about, proposed and things, and culturally and socially, and then you can't talk about things that are, obviously truths, or they wouldn't be suppressing them. And culturally, you are pushing an agenda and you're suppressing a point of view. Like, we don't have the ability to analyze what's going on around us. We need you guys to think for us. We can't express ourselves on social media and things like this. I mean, that's what it's coming down to. Even with Liz Cheney, if you don't accept what the court says, you're against the Constitution. What? Like, when a politician says who's against the Constitution or not, right? And so this is breeding a level of hatred and anger towards the powers that be. When you suppress people and you tell them that their opinions are completely wrong and they shouldn't have the right to express those opinions, then there's going to be a backlash. And the backlash is coming. Eventually, there's going to be backlash, especially when things break down. Because right now people are pacified. But if you have power outages and you can't, drive places because there's no gas and everything costs 4 times what it used to cost, then there's going to be problems. There's going to be outrage. And that's coming because they're not dealing with the essential problem that there's just too much debt, right? America is in too much debt. And because they're not dealing with the big problem that America is insolvent. We're just, the debt is, we can never pay off the debt. And so America, as people used to know it, is dead. It's gone. And at some point they're going to have to admit it. It's coming in the near future. It's already started. But when they admit this, they're not going to admit it in a real way. They're going to blame whatever Trump or whatever it is, right? COVID and things like this. When it comes out that economically America can't really recover, like we have to go, Chapter 11, like bankruptcy kind of stuff, right? Where you can't pay off your debts. And, because there's a $250 billion worth of debt out there collectively that America, the government and the American people owe. Nobody has a $250 billion, right? It doesn't exist where you could pay off, a $250 billion of debt. And even if you did, the debt is wealth, and that would still cause a problem. If we paid off the debt, there would be no wealth, right? Because debt is wealth right now. And eventually, that has to collapse. It's insolvent.
An insurrectionist openly admitted on this show last night what Cheney is trying to get people in power to understand. Trump is a con.
I've talked about Trump being a flim-flam man, so it isn't like that isn't true. But Trump is more real. Trump is more authentic than all of these other clowns, all these other politicians. They're acting like nice people and people that are concerned for you, and they aren't, right? We all know this. And so Trump is more sincere about what he is, and they hate that, right? They hate that he is, himself. He gets to be himself, where they all have to put on this act, all these politicians and media people.
And last year, I honestly put a man above Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I believed in man. I believed what was being told to me.
Wait, his name is Anthony Antonio? Is that his mom? Is she doing an intervention? Look at how concerned Chris Cuomo is. He's an insurrectionist. He's an insurrectionist that put Trump above his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And now he's having a come to Cuomo moment.
He was the president of our United States. I went to Washington like he called us to. Maybe I believed that America was being robbed of a president, and I now know that that was a lie.
Is it because you're facing criminal charges? See, the one thing that Trump did, which sucked, like I thought Trump should be done, and he's not, unfortunately, because, Trump didn't deliver. Trump didn't protect America. He didn't, make America great again. He didn't deliver, right? And he bailed on all these people. Trump bailed on people like this, and I don't think this guy says, I don't know, whatever. But he bailed on the shaman QB, right? He bailed on all those people that he riled up. And so he, he gave that speech condemning them, and he certainly riled them up, which was, a moment of complete weakness, and he was sort of exposed. And so I thought that would be the end of him, that some of his base would realize he didn't deliver. Like he didn't, just like Q didn't deliver. But they're, so desperate, and they have nothing else, right? They don't have a backup, some sort of other solution, and they're desperate, and they see the way America is going. And so all they have is they've been backed into a Trump corner. But it also shows you who's really in power. Because when January 6th happened, Trump had to finally come out and denounce the people that, went into the Capitol building. Even though he wouldn't, during his whole presidency and campaign before that, he wouldn't denounce white supremacists. He wouldn't, go after the extremists that were supporting him, people who were clearly, hurting him politically, even because they were loyal. But when this happened and Trump realized he was screwed, he had to denounce these people that he brought to Washington, D.C. and riled them up. But then guys like this, the QAnon shaman, all these people, they were told by their lawyers, look, you're going to have to denounce Trump if you want any chance of doing less time or no time or whatever the consequences. And that shows you who's in power, because all these people were advised by their lawyers to go in and slam Trump, right? And all these people who are so loyal to Trump and worshiped him are turning on him because they don't want to do as much jail time. Because, the power isn't with Trump. As much as Cuomo and these people still want to claim Trump has all this power, you can see by all these actions that he's basically powerless.
His excuse will be ignorance. The men and women in power do not have that excuse.
What do you mean the men and women in power? Like, who are you talking about? Like, what power has Trump Trump was the tweeter in chief, and you even called him that. Like, he didn't have any influence over policy. I mean, certainly he wasn't doing the things that JoJo's doing. The massive giveaways and things that JoJo's about to do, all these things that Joe's doing socially, all the, social agenda that's being pushed forward, because Joe Biden has behind him social media, the powers that be, most media networks, Hollywood, and the agenda. Like, he has the agenda that they've been trying to push for years. They've been, Agenda 21, right? It's 21, folks. It's Agenda 21, and we're in 21. And so that was the goal, and they're pushing it through JoJo. And Trump didn't have any of that backing, so he just got on and started to tweet. This guy's talking about, like, Trump had, Trump's power is his popularity. But remember when Trump tweeted, what way is this to run a country? Right? Like, he was the president, and so this is kind of wonderful. Cuomo is such, such an absolute dum-dum.
To exercise your right to fight for anything better in your life, you're going to be put in the back of the line again. And in the party of Trump, defending a move like this means doing what they do most and best. Lie. Like
again, CNN using words like truth and lie.
Trump's main minion did today. Listen to this.
Those Jim Crow laws were drafted by Democrats. They were implemented by Democrats, and they kept Democrats in power.
This man is proof that politics makes you stupid. This is a debate champion, Ivy League twice over. And that is one of the stupidest arguments I can imagine. He's right. They were Democrats. You know what they also were? Bigots. That's what they were. And you know who now owns that mantle? He does. Because he stands for laws that are nothing but discriminatory.
The thing is, like, Ted Cruz has always been so slimy and unlikable. Like, even his fellow Republicans don't like him. And, you know, he was against Trump when he was running for president against him. And they got into it, and Trump said stuff about his wife and all these things. And now he is slathering all over Trump. Like, Ted Cruz is one of the people I dislike most in politics. I dislike Ted Cruz more than I dislike Chris Cuomo. But the problem here is Chris Cuomo, his rant here about the Republicans and their agenda is that it flies in the face of what politics is all about and what news media is all about and what, pop culture, this whole, American culture is all about, is finding people that agree with you, finding a demographic, and then pretending, because this is what these people do, news media and politicians, pretending to agree with them and pretending to care about them. And so the Republican Party has one demographic, one passionate demographic that is their base, and they are Trump supporters. Or they have a more favorable opinion of Trump than any other politician, because there's degrees of Trump supporters. And so you have, probably 70 or 80% of the Republican Party, and that's how they feel. And they certainly like Trump a lot more than Liz Cheney, who appears to be like a Benedict Arnold for stabbing him in the back. And so they had to do that. The Republican Party had to do that. They have to embrace Trump. They have no choice. There hasn't been a candidate who has created so much passion and has had so much support as Trump. And so they all have to do that. Ted Cruz, all of them. It's the political system. The Democrats don't have anybody like that. The Democrats don't have anybody that creates passion. They had Bernie Sanders, but that's, that's something they don't want, right? The Democratic establishment twice rigged elections against Bernie Sanders. So they don't want passion in their party. No one was really passionate about Hillary Clinton. I mean, what? She had, a small, 5% of Hillary lovers or something. I mean, in terms of her voter base. But they weren't turning up at her rallies. Like, she was talking to empty seats, right? And Joe Biden, they hit him because they hit him away from, with COVID, from the lack of crowds that he would have drawn, where Trump was a rock star and Bernie was, similar to that. And so the Democrats have veered away from having somebody that inspires passion. The Democrats don't have a candidate that people love. Like Obama was, more of a sort of a rock star. Bill Clinton to some extent, especially in his heyday. But they haven't had anybody like that since Obama. And Obama didn't inspire as the kind of passion that Trump does. And where Chris Cuomo is, worse than Ted Cruz, and that's, quite a feat, is that the Democratic establishment and the media and Hollywood and all this, these groups are forcing an agenda that Americans really don't want. So the only way they could really force it was to create a villain in Trump, like a Hollywood-style villain in Trump, to, so many people, and get them passionate about that. Because they weren't going to be passionate about the agenda that JoJo was going to roll out. And JoJo's, a puppet, right? He's just rubber stamping the agenda, Agenda 21 or whatever it is. See, one of the ways you sell something is you have a piece of crap product, but there's two choices, and the other product that you're selling against, your competitor, is, can be made to look worse, right? Can be made to look like it's even worse than your product. And that's what the Democrats are doing. They're saying what Trump is and was and what he was going to do and what his supporters believe in. They're all these ignorant, redneck, racist people that are, don't want to change and move into the future. And so their whole agenda is about that these people, Trump supporters and Trump himself are so evil and so backward, and they're trying to destroy the country and stop all this, positive, good progress that they're rolling out. That you never really look at their agenda with an open mind and open heart if you're a Democrat or a person, who's neutral, someone who's an independent or something, and that you just think about how bad Trump is and the Trump supporters. Like that's their whole spiel. And if you're not going to buy Trump and his rhetoric, then you're going to, by default buy theirs. And people are so angry at Trump and the Trump supporters. I mean, you see this in, on social media, that they buy whatever is the alternative. They're not passionate about the alternative. They're just passionate about hating Trump. That's why they got to keep Trump alive. They got to keep Trump out there because they don't care about the Republican Party, for him to pretend he cares about what happens in the Republican Party, and that if Trump is such a villainous person, then he would destroy the Republican Party, and then you would just, win every election. But that's not what's actually happening here. But in reality, and this is what I talk about as a solution all the time, is that the materialistic system that we've lived under, that we have, been indoctrinated with, has shown itself to be a failure because human beings have gotten worse and worse. The lies have gotten worse and worse. The character qualities have gotten worse and worse. The family dynamics, the social system, our culture has gotten worse and worse. Like everything's going in the wrong direction. And the Republican Party doesn't have a solution because they've been a big part of the problem. And religion doesn't have a solution because religions are power organizations, political organizations, and they don't really connect people with God. And so everything that we've known is in the American culture, things that we've enjoyed, things that we believed to be, baseball, apple pie, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet, right? Like all these things, the pursuit of happiness, all these things have completely played out, right? The effects of this experiment are there. The results are in. And the people who are celebrities and Hollywood people and, athletes and people who are rich and famous or just rich have showed you that when you achieve the so-called American dream, it doesn't make you happy or it doesn't make you a better person. In fact, it makes you worse. So the American dream doesn't deliver. And the, hedonistic American system, especially now with the internet, where everybody is constantly being stimulated in one way or another, is living these, these alternate lives on a cyber universe with their social media stuff and all the rest of it, has created worse people. And the system itself, the economic system, the debt-based system that has propped this lifestyle up is collapsing. And that, Americans are going to suffer because globally, nobody lives like this, right? And if you go to other countries, they have a small segment of rich people that live like Americans. You go around the globe, and there's a small segment of elite people, people at the top of the economic system, maybe 10%, maybe 20%, live like the majority of Americans. Like over half the American people live with running water and, even in crappy tenement houses or, in trailers and things like this, right? Things that are not the best houses, not the best neighborhoods. People still have, running water and cable TV and internet and, they have all this food in the local grocery stores or Walmart or whatever it is. And so people have a level of lifestyle, even the poor people in America have a level of lifestyle that very few people have in these other countries, especially the poorer countries. And so it's an illusion because Americans think that this is some lifestyle that can be sustained. But if you understand the amount of resources and the amount of debt, the amount of resources that Americans use and the amount of debt that has, created this lifestyle we're all living on like a government credit card, that it's not sustainable. And nobody's saying that. Like none of these people are saying that you're going to have to suffer in some way. Your lifestyle is going to take a hit. And people who are unhappy, most of them unhappy with their lives and their jobs, they're not really, living good lives, can't handle things getting worse. But they are not looking at the actual problem, which the system isn't making people happy. Americans aren't happy for the most part. Look at how angry the people on the internet are. Just entitled brats. I mean, not grateful for your opulent lifestyle. We're all living like kings used to. Like you go back 200 years and kings didn't have the kind of privileges, the kind of lifestyle that we have now in modern day America. But people are still miserable, hateful, whatever, angry all the time, depressed, all these things. And so it's not working. Psychologically, people are much worse, and people are weaker on every level. And the entitlement is off the charts, as Don Lemons would say. And so a spiritual solution is what I have said all along, where you connect to God on a deeper level, and then you can accept the changes that need to happen to the system, to a culture that's going in the wrong direction. And so, that's why the heartfulness system exists. I've talked about this in so many videos. And it's a solution, a spiritual solution, that brings people back to, a level of, like, their higher level of consciousness. Everyone has a soul and an ego, and it enhances the soul, where the American lifestyle is aggrandizing the ego. And that's where we are right now as a culture. Like everybody's egos, everyone's a diva personality, right? The glorification of the ego. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.